So with all of the recent hype around the Apple Vision Pro, I've been very curious to know how the Quest 3 performs when it comes to productivity. I tried the Quest 2 a couple of years ago, and for me it just wasn't great for productivity due to the low resolution screens. However, with the upgraded displays and the pancake lenses on the Quest 3, I thought it was time to try it out again. So I picked up a Quest 3 a couple of months ago, and I've been doing video editing as well as general working inside the headset, and I've got a few thoughts. Now normally I work on a 38-inch ultra-wide, plus I have my MacBook Pro 16-inch display next to that, so it was going to be pretty hard for the Quest 3 to beat. But I was super excited to give it a go, so I downloaded Immersed and started working. The first thing that I noticed was the screens, and obviously the screen size. And it is really cool to be able to work on larger displays than you normally can in real life. For me, I found the sweet spot with the displays was around maybe the equivalent of a 50-inch screen in virtual reality. Any bigger than that and I kind of had to look around too much. Plus, being able to add multiple displays was a nice touch. Like I said, I've already got 2 in real life, and I found having 3 in VR was kind of nice because I could have one for like a video or a stream while I was editing, and then have an extra screen for just whatever else I wanted up. Or while I was doing some color grading, for example, in DaVinci Resolve, I could have my scopes open on a separate display. And due to the fact that there is a limited field of view when it comes to the displays, it is a little bit annoying having to completely turn your head if you want to look to a display on the left or the right, since your peripheral vision is a bit restricted. But so far it was all pretty good. Like, I was quite enjoying the multiple displays, having the big screens, being able to work in whatever environment I wanted. The next thing I started to look at was the resolution of the displays, because again, that was one of the big downsides to the Quest 2, but with the Quest 3 I hoped that the upgrade in resolution of the displays would make the difference. And obviously the displays on the Quest 3 aren't going to be as good as a real display. Comparing it to my ultra wide really isn't a fair comparison, but overall I actually found it kind of not too bad. It feels kind of like working on a 1080p monitor, so it's not as sharp as working on like a 2K or a 4K monitor. I found it pretty acceptable. I think the thing that was a bit distracting was there is fairly noticeable screen door effect with the Quest 3, especially when you're focusing on fine details like trying to make a specific cut in a timeline or checking focus on a clip. Those types of things, the screen door effect does get a little bit distracting, and that's the moments where I just kind of wished I was back working on a clear monitor with no sort of visual barrier between me and the screen. But again, at this stage I was like, okay, editing in VR is still kind of novel. I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep persevering despite some of these challenges starting to build up a little bit. So next I thought it would be a good idea to try some color grading in VR and see how that compares to color grading on a monitor. And I do my grading in Resolve, and I usually use a reference image to match clips. And so I took a reference image that I'd graded on my ultra wide and used that to try to color grade some footage in the VR headset. And unfortunately, the results didn't come out great. I got it visually pretty close from what I could see inside the headset, but then when I took off the headset, it just really wasn't close at all. But whatever, you know, I got the expensive ultra wide monitor for color grading anyway, so it's fine. I'll just do my color grading on the monitor and then I'll do my editing in the headset, right? But then after using the headset a few times, one issue that started to come up was latency. I found that I really had to have the headset connected via USB cable to remove any latency. And this is kind of where all of my problems really started to compound. So when I tried to connect to Immersed via a Wi-Fi connection, I just ran into all sorts of issues. Like my cursor wouldn't appear on the screen, so I couldn't see where I was trying to click. My multiple displays wouldn't load properly, that they just sit there with a loading symbol. And I found myself often spending like 10 to 15 minutes just trying to get the headset to work and the connection to work properly, so that by the time it actually started working, I was just frustrated and it was annoying and it was wasting time. And so plugging in the headset with USB kind of solved most of these problems. It meant that I could load up Immersed pretty easily, and most times it would work on the first time I opened it. However, this led to another problem, which was the battery life. So when I've got the VR headset plugged into an external battery pack that's got high enough voltage, I could basically use it indefinitely. However, when I had it connected to my laptop, it would never charge fast enough and the battery would always continue to drain. So the maximum amount of time that I was able to use the Quest 3 with Immersed while connected via USB was maybe about an hour and a half, and that's it. And this was even connecting the headset directly to my MacBook Pro Thunderbolt port with a 60-watt USB-C cable. So it just meant that I was never able to really get into a solid editing session just because of the battery life of the Quest 3. Then of course you've got the comfort issues. I've just got the standard strap with the Quest 3 and I'm planning on upgrading it eventually, but overall I actually don't find it too uncomfortable. But for sure, wearing a heavy headset on your face for hours is just way more uncomfortable than sitting there with no headset and working on a regular monitor. Plus it's definitely harder on the eyes than a real monitor. I found pretty much within the first 5 to 10 minutes of wearing the headset and trying to get work done, I would feel a little bit of eye strain. And then after an extended session of about an hour to an hour and a half, when I'd take the headset off, I was finding that my eyes would feel quite sore and that even at times be a bit bloodshot. So at this point, I was starting to question, what's the point of working in VR at all? Why does anybody do it and should I continue? And that is when I recognized what I think is probably the biggest draw card to working in a VR environment, and that is the social aspect of it. I found myself, after not working in VR for a few days, I was actually missing working in an environment with other real people. And I know virtual reality isn't the same as working with other real people in an office, for example, but in terms of all the things that I've tried to feel more social while working solo from home, working in a VR environment with other people legitimately feels the closest to being social outside of a real office environment. For me, I'll often just go and work at cafes because I like just being around people, because for me that helps combat some of the loneliness of just working solo at home. But there was actually one thing that I really liked about working in Immersed was the fact that you can sit in rooms with other people, not necessarily interacting with them, but just knowing that there's other people there actually felt quite nice. So my final thoughts about working in the Quest 3 is essentially that it's not for me. I think if you've got a tiny little laptop with a small screen, then yeah, might be a better experience for you because you can have essentially a huge ultra wide in front of you. However, the battery is still going to be an issue and it just doesn't feel high enough resolution to really feel like a viable option to replace a proper monitor, especially for video editing. On the flip side, if you do work from home and you work on stuff that's not quite so technical as editing, then maybe the social aspect would make it worth it. I don't know. But for me, am I going to keep working in VR? Probably not. But I do think it is a very interesting space, especially with the rise of the Apple Vision Pro. I'm very keen to see what the Quest 4 will be like when it comes to working in VR. Let me know what you think. Would you work in VR? Do you work in VR? What's your experience been? And are you interested in seeing more of these types of videos from me? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're interested in more info on how to color grade in DaVinci Resolve, then check out this video right here.